So, hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and I'm so excited today to be talking all about Netflix's Anatomy of a Scandal. We are so thrilled today to be joined by Sienna Miller, Rupert Friend, Michelle Dockery, and Naomi Scott. And Sienna, I wanted to start with a question for you because I think there's so many really beautiful performance moments that you get to play to in the moments where things come to the surface for your character. She very much doesn't have a confidant, someone that she can talk to about everything going on. So there's little inflections that we get to see in your face right before they get out of the car at the courthouse, when she's riding up in the elevator to meet her husband for lunch, when she's closed the car door and her kids are inside. And so I was really interested in how you found those moments emotionally in scenes in your performance, and really captured a lot of the internalized dialogue that she's having with herself that she can't express to anyone around her.
I think those moments are sort of essential with Sophie, and SJ really fought to have a lot of them in there and added them in certain moments as well, because the outward facing quality that she has is one that's very together, very stoic, very, she wants to project an image of just that she's absolutely fine and that this will resolve itself. But it's only in those moments of quietude and solitude that you sense that she's really unraveling. And so, and the pain and the shame of for example, picking the kids up from the school gates, having been someone that was perhaps really enjoyed the power she had and attracting envy. She's suddenly very, it's all out there that she's going through what she's going through, and she's too stoic to really talk to anybody or admit it. So I love those moments, and I have to credit our director for really pushing for them in the scripts.
That's really wonderful to hear. And Rupert, in terms of the way that you're playing your character, there's an interesting choice in the fact that it never feels like you're showing inflections of doubt when he's being accused. He never considers the fact that he may have even misinterpreted behavior, let alone done anything wrong. And if you'd played that choice differently, it could have really shifted the dynamic of your character and the story as a whole. And so I was interested in the genesis of that very specific choice and carrying that through in multiple scenes to make sure that really comes across to the audience.
That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, that was actually the thing that tipped over for me the interest in playing the part in the first place, was that how can you so vociferously defend something that when we read the script, we were all, none of us particularly liked the guy. It's not sort of someone you warm to. And yet, so what is the challenge is probably to find a way to see the world as he does, which is, as you said, that he doesn't feel that he's done anything wrong. And then if you can embed that as a truth rather than a concealed lie, then you can fight for it as much as you would a genuine truth.
Mm-hmm. And Michelle, coming over to your character, I thought there were some really powerful moments of introspection with her in seeing the pressure that she puts upon herself when she comes out of court, in that moment where she feels like she was off her game and off kilter a little bit, the way that she just immediately disassociates herself from everybody. And we see that frustration rising to the surface. And obviously we learn a little bit more about the driving force behind that later on. But I was interested in how you really wanted to play that and express that, and how you saw the way that she holds herself to such a level of perfection as a lot of the pressure that's on herself outside of the media attention this case is getting.
Well, she has such an interesting arc as a character, and she starts off being, very detached and quite reserved. And like you say, she begins to unravel as the show goes on. And it's in those moments where she's off her game, when she's questioning Kitty, that I was allowed to emote a lot more, because Kate is so stoic and sort of closed off at the beginning, that as we began to shoot those scenes, I could really start to explore how much further I could go emotionally. And and that's a result of Kate's past. She's had to learn to protect herself and create these really strong boundaries, so that she isn't hurt again, so it was a great character to explore like that, because there are many different sides to her, and we sort of begin to see who she really is as the layers start to peel back.
Yeah, absolutely. And Naomi, I wanted to talk with you about your courtroom scene performance, because there's kind of two different layers to it. You know, firstly, you have to bring your character to such a place of finding this confidence within herself to even walk into this room. And then there's two different ways in which your performance comes across when she's being, you know, questioned by Michelle's character. That's obviously something that she's been prepared for. She knows what those questions are going to be. And so she's able to kind of create a real measure for herself to get through those moments. And then there's a real shift when she's being cross-examined in terms of her emotional response to those moments, because she is being pushed off balance. And so I was interested in how you found those two different dynamics within those scenes, because they're very dialogue heavy for you as well.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think when Olivia, you know, when she's got a job to do in her mind, and I think she's kind of like, you know, she's been around politicians, she knows how to get a narrative across, and she's almost kind of attacking this almost like professionally. And we spoke a lot about, SJ and I spoke a lot about, you know, her really kind of that emotional trajectory for her, and when she, when the body and the emotion takes over, and when she kind of is able to keep it together. And that's why, you know, with Kate, that part is somewhat a performance, you know, and she doesn't want, I don't think she wants James to see her kind of, you know, break down. I think, and as I said, there's that moment where the body takes over, and she, you know, the emotions do just come to the surface as she is retelling her trauma. And hats off to Gisette Simon, who is just incredible. And it's funny, she kind of did it different every single time, and it kept me on my toes. And I guess it's this whole conversation around being a perfect witness, you know, being a good witness. And, you know, those tiny little slip ups that really, when you step away from it, you ask yourself the question, well, why does that make her more unreliable? You know, why does the fact that she's, you know, still in love with him make her more unreliable? Why, you know, does the fact that she's already had a sexual relationship with him and a history, why does that make her more unreliable? And these are the sort of things that I think the show is big, it pokes at, especially with the character of Olivia, which I really love. And I love when anything can kind of, through the gateway of entertainment, just kind of start conversations. And I think that hopefully that's what those courtroom scenes do, you know, in living rooms and amongst families, and even just to ourselves, you know, as we're watching it, the audience member kind of becoming the jury. How are we reacting to what we're seeing, and why do we lean one way or another? Not in a kind of judgmental way, but more just, can we create safe space for conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. And Sienna, I think it's in the final episode, there's a line that your character says that I thought said so much, where she basically says that she feels like her entire life she's been both overestimated and underestimated by people. And I thought that was very telling. And so wanted to ask you, did you view her as a character who people really have never taken the time to kind of get beneath the surface and really get to know in a true manner, with the fact that she says that?
I think that that's probably true, but I think she's also complicit in that, and she's understanding that it was something she used, and interestingly, it was what was projected to her, and she never questioned it, so just projected it back. What's interesting about that moment is that she's really reflecting on how she's enabled this, and really is ready to make a change where she can become something, A, with her own identity, and be someone with substance and significance, and hopefully raise two children that end up different to the way that she and James had been raised and ended up. So I like that she's able to self-analyze in that moment. And I think she's speaking the truth, but I don't think she's asking for sympathy.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. And Rupert, obviously talking before a little bit about the way that your character views the fact that he's being accused of sexual assault is different to the way that he reacts in terms of his affair. And his affair, it feels like there's push and pull. There's moments where he's trying to say and do the right thing. He sees that he's done something wrong. And then there's also moments where he's really seeing himself as the victim. You know, he starts talking about the stress at work and how that led to it, and is really finding a lot of external excuses. And so how did you want to play that push and pull between the fact that it seems like he does see himself both as the wrongdoer and the victim when it comes to the affair specifically?
I mean, there's a narcissism in people who, when they are accused of something that they have done, make themselves the victim, you know, which runs through this guy. And you see it, I think, when people are not used to being questioned and certainly don't particularly question themselves, there's a default to be like, but it's all about me. It's all about me. Why can't you see? I'm the one who suffered so hard. And you're like, well, let's just put this perspective. So I think trying to keep my own sense of judgment out of the picture was the continual practice, because I don't think Whitehouse, and I think actually his kind of coming to a knowledge of himself happens before our eyes in the show. I don't think he's someone who thought about all of this and then buried it and is lying. In his opinion, I think he's literally going, oh my God, I may have perhaps done X, Y, or Z. Just as Sophie starts to say, I'm not letting this go because this doesn't add up. And it's that wonderful thing that I loved in the writing of, they call it a woman's intuition. I always find that a bit patronizing. Just, the human instinct for something doesn't smell right here. And she, she's a dog with a bone on that. And I love that, because she actually, although, you rightly said has to go on her own journey, she is the one who holds him to account and gets to the truth in the end.
Mm-hmm. And Michelle, coming back to you as well, and you were talking before about obviously your character is holding on to a lot of things in a certain way in terms of self-preservation and building up a lot of walls around herself. But I was interested if you saw her as a fairly introspective character because of everything that's happened in her past. She has had to spend a lot of time kind of thinking and reassessing things in her life, and even the fact that she calls out being in a relationship with someone who's unavailable being something that she did very intentionally for herself. And so did you see her as quite introspective in that regard?
I did. And it's interesting what Rupert is saying, because Kate actually does the same. I think she is discovering so much as this journey progresses. I don't think she doesn't quite realize what she's letting herself in for. I think she takes on this case because it is, one of the biggest and most high profile cases she's been handed. And she doesn't quite kind of address the possible consequences of that and what it could do to her career, as as the story goes on. And I think as she begins to unravel, she begins to sort of dig deeper in, what the root of all of this is. And I think, by the end, she is a very different person, or has become, like she says to Sophie, she is sort of both of those two people. I think we're fine for spoilers on this, aren't we?
Yeah.
Okay, so she becomes Holly again, but then is still Kate. But I think she would never have addressed that. I don't know, maybe she would never have really addressed it properly, unless this actually happened and she became face to face with him again. And really she sort of sees so much of herself in Olivia, in a lot of those courtroom scenes. There were moments that line, don't be such a prick tease, is a familiar, of course that is such a familiar, those words are so familiar to her, and I sort of wanted to kind of subtly play the memory there, but obviously without giving it away too soon. So it's interesting because I think the journey is definitely sort of taken as each moment unravels for Kate.
And Naomi, going back to what you were talking about before in terms of for Olivia, this is a man that she was in love with, and that also, she's standing in court saying, this is also the man that sexually assaulted me. And I think you really beautifully capture that aspect where both of those things can be true about a person.
Absolutely.
And her feelings of love for him have obviously changed, but haven't, those don't go away overnight.
Yeah.
And so what were the challenges in making sure that you kind of captured and paid honor to the fact that this was a real relationship with a man that she was in love with, and also this is the person that assaulted her that she's standing up in court telling everybody about?
Yeah, no, I think her and James were intellectual equals. I think she really believed in him and him as a politician and what he stood for. I think she really looked up to him. So I think when she's standing there, there's almost still a sense of wanting to maintain his respect for her, like if we're talking about the layers underneath it all. And I think that goes into what I was saying about her wanting to almost attack this in a kind of professional sense. And I'm, this is my argument and I've got to get it across. And there's something about him not wanting him to see her broken. And then the complexity of that with the anger. And I think that for me, I kind of saw it as the timing of it. Again, what I was speaking about earlier, which was like when those moments come out, and the almost tenseness of her, and the like, I'm playing a part here and this is what's happening. And then of course, that beginning to unravel and just picking moments to glance that way, but never wanting to lock eyes. And similarly with Sienna, who was up in the stalls. I think that's kind of how I thought about it, how I attacked it.
Well, all four of your performances are really fantastic in this series, and want to thank you all so much for talking about it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.